our honored guest. 273, we'll sing all three verses. I know the Lord will find a way for me. I know the Lord will find a way for me. If I walk in heaven's light, shun the wrong and do the right, I know the Lord will find a way for me. The Lord has said, go preach the word to all the world. The Lord has said, go preach the word to all the world. If I walk in heaven's light, shun the wrong and do the right, I know the Lord will find a way for me. Won't it be grand to hear him say, well done? Won't it be grand to hear him say, well done? If I walk in heaven's light, shun the wrong and do the right, won't it be grand to hear him say, well done?
Well, I hope you picked up a lesson sheet out in the foyer. If you didn't, it looks like everybody must have gotten one. And nobody gave me any feedback on those other little sheets on Joshua. So I don't know if you want me to continue those or not. I made one for tonight for Judges, but I still need some feedback before I keep killing trees to Micah. You like them?
Yeah.
Okay. Squeaky wheel gets the grease. You were the loud. Yeah, you were loud. So. I upped the number this time.
No, I thought, you're not just going to make them for them.
No. Now, because I'll let you be a handout of that page. And then if I can get somebody to hand out this other page. Oh, I knew Doug would. Oh, well, thank you, Jonathan. And those are different ones. Yeah. I didn't know our machine copied in color, and I may get my hand smacked for that one, but I didn't know it did it, and it did it. And it's nice, isn't it? You can thank Brian Bird for that. I'll probably get an email tomorrow that says, don't you ever do that again. Those are just some things I found that I could buy real cheaply, and it has some good stuff on it, and so I thought it might be helpful for each of these books. So tonight we're studying the book of Judges, and I better get to moving because it takes its name. The Latin word is Liber Judicum, book of Judges. For those who remember their Latin, liber is book. And it got its name from the Greek in the Septuagint, kritai, and it's found in Judges 2, verse 16. The name of these men who are going to rule over Israel at different times over the next, say, 300 years. And then, of course, the Hebrew, shophatim, it comes from the word meaning to judge, shaphat, but it's a plural for judges. Again, that's the word that's found in Judges 2:16 in the Hebrew. It's the second of the former prophets. We looked at the first one last week, Joshua, and then we skip Ruth. Now, some Hebrew people put Ruth with Judges because Ruth occurs during the time of the Judges, but in their formal scriptures, Ruth appears later. So Judges is in between Joshua and Samuel. Let's see, what else? Well, let's go to the outline. Thank you, man. Sir. A lot of different ways to outline that. I'm not going to go over it. I'll just let you look at it. I put it on your sheet. But it starts off, this first part is more like a prologue leading up to the judges. Why they're in trouble? Well, the reason they're in trouble is they didn't do what God told them to. God told them, says, you kill the Canaanites. You wipe them out. Because God knew if you don't wipe them out, you're going to start being idolaters and doing all the bad things these people are doing already. And he says, you got to kill them. Well, that sounds harsh, doesn't it? But he's given them this land, and he says, you got to cleanse the land before you go in, and they didn't do it. So they get into all kinds of trouble, and we start looking at the different judges, Othniel, Ehud, and Shamgar. And the way I do it, I'm with, like they did, Deborah and Barak. As you read the text, you think Barak's a real wimp. He's not much of a guy. Deborah is the hero of the story, or the heroine. Barak, well, you just don't like Barak very much. But when you read the heroes of faith, Hebrews 11, Deborah doesn't show up, but Barak does. Kind of interesting. But anyway, and then we get down to the end, and the last five chapters of Judges, most people call it an epilogue, and we'll talk about it later, but there's two big examples that happen here. One is idolatry, and one is immorality, and we'll talk about those at the end. Period of the Judges. It was a cycle, and they would have a period of oppression. Then God would raise up a judge to deliver them, and then they would have peace. And then they would have oppression, judge, peace, and so it goes down through this thing. You can add up the years. I can't remember if I added these up to over 400 years. What we don't know is how much overlap is in there. When you do a table like this, the trouble is you don't know how much overlap between the different people, because most of these judges are in different parts of the nation, as we'll see in just a little bit when we get to a map of the judges. And let me catch up with my sheet here. Let's just go on to a map. And I hope you can see a little bit in your map, because I can't read this one. Othniel here. There's Deborah. The ones that are underlined are major judges. And then you have one, I believe this is Shamgar up here. Somebody read it on their map. Is that Shamgar? He's a lesser judge. You only have like one verse that tells how many people he killed. He doesn't get very much. But look how far up north he is. Here's the Sea of Galilee. Here's Mount Hermon. He's almost up into that territory. And then you get down to Othniel, and he's down here by the Dead Sea. So, and then you have some over here in the Transjordan, Jephthah. So these judges were spread out. There was not a unified Israel at this time. So these judges were at different locations. Here's one I liked. I like this one. It kind of shows what they were in. It was a vicious cycle, just a vicious cycle. And it starts up here with this prologue that said, here's how you got into this mess. And then you start going around with the judges. Abimelech was not a judge. Some people consider him a judge. He was not a judge. The people of Shechem made him a king. And we'll talk about him a little bit because he's a very interesting guy. That can be my father is king or father of a king. Melech is the word for king, and Ab is the word for father. And so you get back up here to this epilogue, and you remember, if you could just keep going around in a circle. Now, to be fair to the people who drew this, this person came up with a way that you kind of diagram a book with this thing called the rings. And that's how this thing originated. And you can have these bars and arrows. But what I wanted us to get, this is just a vicious cycle of a period of the judges. Okay. Once again, I tried to figure out how do you present the book of Judges? You see, we don't study Judges a whole lot, do we? We teach the children about Samson, but we really don't teach them all about Samson, do we? Samson was a real, well, he'd be disfellowshipped in the church today, I can tell you that. I think most churches would exercise church discipline if they had a Samson come in. He's not one of those guys you want to match character with. However, he had faith in God. There's no question about that. So he wasn't totally bad. I mean, when he found all that honey, he wanted to share it with his parents. I mean, that's a pretty good kid. But yeah, so Judges is not a book that we're real familiar with. So I thought, well, let's just try to break down some of these chapters. Now, if in this sheet that I gave you down under the ring, I give you some things about the period of the Judges. It was a period of anarchy. That's really what it was. Now, they considered, a lot of people say they were a theocracy, that God was their king. Well, they didn't have much use for God, did they? They would rather have worship to Baal and Asherah and all that. So I would say anarchy would be the rule. And anarchy comes from Greek. Arche is ruler, and the on in front of it means without. So without a ruler is anarchy. I'll just throw that out for free. Let's see. I give you this thing about the Hebrew nation, about the theocracy and all that kind of stuff. So you can read that when you want to. The Talmud thinks that Samuel wrote Joshua. Well, there's a good chance that Samuel did, since he was a judge, and he follows the regular book of Judges, if you will. So it's possible, but impossible to prove. How long did the period of Judges last? Jephthah says about 300 years. If you take the time from the Exodus to the time of David, then you get the 480 years. So again, I can't tell you exactly how long the period of the Judges was or anything like that. But I offer you some what some other people said. Like Leviticus, this is a book that we don't spend a lot of time in because there's some real delicate things that are talked about in Judges as well as Leviticus. So let's just start with chapter 1. If the Israelites had conquered the promised land like they should have and wiped out the Canaanites, Judges would be a whole different book. They wouldn't have half the problems that they brought on themselves. But because they did, God had told them in Deuteronomy 7, he said, you utterly destroy them. This guy says, drive them out. Deuteronomy 7 says, you utterly destroy them. That means kill them. I know that sounds horrible, but the people in Canaan were under a curse from God, and they were supposed to kill them, but they didn't. So it gave them a whole bunch of problems. Now we get to chapter 2, and we get a second account of Joshua's death.
I hate to ask this, but are they under a curse because of what Ham did? No.
Has nothing to do with Ham. The curse on the promised land was God wanted the idolatry out of there. So he put them under this ban or this curse that you have to clear your throat to say krim and all of that kind of stuff. So I didn't want to clear my throat tonight and talk about that. But no, it has nothing to do with Ham.
Where did I get that from? Wasn't he the father of the Canaanites, or I'm getting mixed up?
Oh, me, now you're going to get me mixed up.
Don't worry about it. Let's keep going.
Yeah, let's keep going. To be fair with you, I guess in a very remote way you could tie it in, but I wouldn't want to risk that, Michelle. So anyway, we get this second account of Joshua's death, and I think it's one we need to read from time to time. So the people served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders who outlived Joshua, who had seen all the great works of the Lord which he had done for Israel. Now Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died when he was 110 years old. Now remember, we read this last week at the end of the book of Joshua. And they buried him within the border of his inheritance at Timnath-Heres in the mountains of Ephraim on the north side of Mount Gaash. When all that generation had been gathered to their fathers, another generation arose after them who did not know the Lord, nor the work which he had done for Israel. And that is the thing we need to remember. Joshua had such an influence that it lasted his lifetime, and the elders that were with him and witnessed the miracles in the wilderness. They outlived him, and then once they died, another generation arose that did not know the Lord. Yes?
How much of that is a failure to teach the upcoming generation as opposed to just a rejection by them?
Well, I would say, based upon Deuteronomy, it was a failure to teach because they had been told, you got to teach it to your children when they wake up, when you walk, all day long. And evidently they didn't do that. So, I'm sorry.
That's a fair warning for us also.
It's a fair warning. That's why we need to read this from time to time. It is a fair warning for us. I know sometimes we think that generation is here. No, we've got a bunch of good kids. I think we're in good shape as far as, for the most part. Are we as strong as we need to be? No. But I think we've got a lot of good kids that are going to be faithful, and for that we can be thankful. Yeah. Oh, let's see what else. Oh, yeah. Here's old Ephraim, kind of right in the middle of everything, and this is where Joshua's buried, was in this area here, and I don't know, geography helps me. Looking at maps helps me. If I know where something is, it helps me relate to things. So I'm going to bring this map up more than once tonight. Well, let's see. We got through the death of Joshua in chapter 2. And chapter 3, we get the first 3 judges. Let me go back. We get Othniel down here. We get Ehud right here, and then Shamgar way up here. So we got them kind of spread out, those first 3 judges of Israel. But what I want you to think about, these were like local guys. So, I mean, what he's doing down here, how much is affected up here? Does that make sense? They're spread out. These first three judges, probably my favorite is Ehud stabbing the fat guy. I just like that story. If you hadn't read it, you need to go read it. But Ehud slips a dagger in, and the bad ruler is a fat man. I'm not hitting fat people, but the ruler was a fat guy, and he stabs him and kills him. And he has to leave his dagger because it's buried up in this guy. So, but it's a great story. Little kids like stories like that. Little boys just love stories like that. But I doubt if the Sunday school teachers are teaching them that. So I probably would, but great story. So we get through chapter 3 and get these first judges. And let's see, what else do we need to get? Oh, then we get to chapters 4 and 5. And here we get Deborah. She's down here near Bethel. And with her is Barak, although he's not listed on this slide. But they're being oppressed from the north part of Israel. Jabin, and his headquarters is Hatzor, Hazor, up here. We drove by it when we were in Israel And I was screaming, wanting to stop, but we didn't have time for it. But I was wanting to stop there because they're just now digging there. And it's one of the largest cities that was in Israel, one of the largest cities they've ever found. And so Deborah and Barak, great story. Chasing a man by the name of Sisera. Barak, I said he was a wimp. He didn't get the victory. He didn't get to kill Sisera. A woman killed him and drove his tent peg through his head. I mean, folks, our little children, our little boys need to hear these stories. I think they'd come to church more if they could hear these stories. I mean, a lady driving a tent peg through a man's temple. I mean, after she gives him some milk and he goes to sleep. I mean, what a great story. I get excited about that. I think you'd miss something. Well, anyway, Deborah and Barak, and in chapter 5 we have the Song of Deborah, but we won't go over that. And then we get to Gideon. Probably one of the better known stories in Judges, the story of Gideon and how he gets picked and the angel coming to him and burning up his food that he prepares for the angel, going down to the spring of Harod and weeding out down to 300 men. I've been there. It's really neat. I don't know if it was like this, but the way they have it, there's this big, long stream that they can line people up and get their drink, and it's pretty neat. Our Jewish guide said they still don't understand the language of what it meant to those lapping and all that. You and I take it that they reached down with their hand and picked up the water so they wouldn't be that they would be alert the whole time. But our Jewish guide said they really don't know what it means. But anyway, they weed them down to 300 men. Gideon gets reassured by hearing these guys tell about the barley cakes. And if you remember that story, Gideon and his scout go down there and they overhear these guys talking about it, and then they know that God's going to deliver them into their hand. And he separates his 300 men into 3 companies, and they, at the appointed time, they break their pitchers, bring out their lights, and blow their horns and shout and whatever, and the enemy starts killing themselves because they're so confused and think they're being overrun. So Gideon has a great victory because of God. But Gideon gets all the gold and has them make an ephod for him. And it becomes an idol for the children of Israel. And they fall back into idolatry. It's a vicious cycle. It just keeps going on and on and on. Now we come to Abimelech. So Gideon dies, and there's a void left. Now Gideon, or Jerubbaal, 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 he had a bunch of kids. And Abimelech, he decides he's going to be the ruler, so he kills 70 of his brothers. I mean, can you imagine having 70 kids? Well, really he had more, 72. Because one of them got away. The youngest got away. So Abimelech kills 70 of his brothers. The men of Shechem made him king because they were afraid of him. And eventually it turned on. But we get down to the end of chapter 9 after we hear all about Abimelech. Thus God repaid the wickedness of Abimelech, which he had done to his father, by killing his 70 brothers. And all the evil of the men of Shechem God returned on their own heads. And on them came the curse of Jotham, the son of Jerubbaal. And Jotham was the youngest brother, and he escaped the execution that Abimelech carried out. Good stuff. Well, now we get, before we get to that, we get these three guys after Abimelech, two guys, Tola and Jair, who judged Israel for 45 years. I mean, these two guys were judging Israel for a long period of time, 45 years. The two of them added on for 45 years. That's a long time, but they were minor judges. We don't know much about what they did. But it sets the stage for Jephthah and the Ammonites. I'm not going to talk a lot about Jephthah. It's a great account. Jephthah was recruited. Really over here is where some of the fighting and stuff's going to take place, because he's fighting the Ammonites. But Jephthah makes a rash vow of sacrificing the first thing that comes out of the door when he gets back, and it turns out to be his daughter. I have my own opinions on what he did. Some believe he sacrificed her. I have a rough time with that. I'm sorry, I do. I have a rough time for a judge that God appointed allowing him to do a human sacrifice. But a lot of people believe that he did a human sacrifice on his daughter. But anyway, I'll let you mull over that. But Jephthah was quite a character as far as what he accomplished and how he dealt with the men of Israel. A whole bunch of stuff going on and on about that. And so we get through with Jephthah, and then we get to probably the guy we know the most about. Well, let's go back to this other one, because here's Samson down here at Gaza. Has a little better honing in. Judges 13 through 16. Samson was like a miracle child, promised by the Lord, put under a Nazirite vow, if you will, to not cut his hair, not to drink grape juice or wine or eat grapes. His mother could not do that, and in Samson. But what a character, man! Talking about having female problems, he had them. He just couldn't stay away from the wrong kind of women, and he just was quite a character. The story of Delilah, you know that one. Oh, you don't love me? And I mean, it sounds real. I mean, she turns on the tears and he crumbles. I mean, I can say that because Gail's not in here, but she's probably listening down there. I might get in trouble. No, Samson, what a character. But he finally executes revenge on the Philistines by bringing down their temple, and kills more people in that than he did in his whole lifetime. And he killed a bunch of Philistines in his lifetime, but he killed more there. Oh. Let me quickly talk about the last two things. A man by the name of Micah had an idol made. Then he found a young Levite to be his priest. he said, man, I've got it made now. And then the people of Dan come and they say, we don't like where we were supposed to be over here. We wouldn't chase the Canaanites out. So they go up here, up north to, well, somebody help me, the name of the place. Laish, thank you. They go up to Laish, they take that, but they take Micah's idol and priest, and that's their idolatrous religion up there. The next case is the man, the priest with the Levite with his concubine, who goes into the territory of Benjamin to a little town called Gibeah and spends the night. And while he's there, the men of the town come, like the ones in Sodom. They're wanting to have homosexual relations with this Levite, and they send his concubine out. They rape her and kill her, and as a result, all of Israel comes out against the tribe of Benjamin, and they fight and destroy most of the tribe of Benjamin. There's some men who escape, and they end up trying to find these women for them from Jabesh Gilead so that the tribe would not die. But the book closes, in those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And so it appears that the cycle would continue. Thank you for your attention. Sorry I had to rush to the end, but glad you were here. See you hopefully Wednesday night. Thank you.